Welcome to my humble abode. I am Yoki the Tail Spinner, and this Tales over coffee. We start the day together with a narrative tale and a cup of coffee in the hope of welcoming a blessed day. We return now to Ukraine horror war stories. Well, they are horror stories, let's face it. And Bucha, where soldiers have just broken into a house with two teenagers. And the door flew open without a knock, and a dozen Russian soldiers poured in, swarthy and bearded ones. They didn't carry themselves like military. Most even had their fingers on their triggers. It made the situation all the more terrifying. Their commander spoke to me in a dark, gravelly voice with a thick accent. Hello. Is anybody else in the house? I'm not going to try and imitate a Russian accent, sorry. In a comedic thing, I might imitate an accent, but not in something as serious as this. Vika dug her nails into me, and I tried to get up from the floor, but my legs turned to jelly. I was getting dizzier by the moment. The man pulled me sharply up on my feet. Stand when the adults are standing. Have you no respect? Were you raised by wolves? Crack! The soldier smacked me on the head. Vika yelped in fear while I flinched, but managed to remain standing. My face began to swell with a sharp, stinging heat. Is anybody else in the house? Any nationalists? Banderovites? Me and Vika both said no, but the Banderovites both turned to the place upside down. They took our phones and Vika's laptop and any food they could find. The Banderovites kept giving Vika looks that made my blood run cold, commenting on her in their language. Thankfully, their leader, the one who slapped me, soon commanded everyone to leave. They seemed to be in a hurry. Later that day, I heard more movement outside. Afraid the Russians have returned, I peeked outside through the corner of the curtain. In the twilight, I could make out at least 24 armed figures, and a short, stocky man with them, in warm black pants and an expensive winter jacket. We've been to this one already, just some kids shitting themselves in fear. Who did you say lives here? I cursed silently. The stocky man, I knew exactly who he was. Alexander Horsky. He was pretty infamous around town. A former deputy at the parliament, he worshipped Russia and had an ego the size of the moon. But I never expected this. Turning on your own people like that. Some no-name doctor, forget about it. The stocky man waved his hand, then clapped his hands. Come on, we've got more Nazis to chase down. I know all the addresses. No changing parameters currently. Missed call from Mum, 12. It's been several days since the Russians entered Bucha. Katya still hasn't returned. Time slowed down to a crawl. I kept feeling like Katya was going to open the front door, walk in, and tell us something reassuring, some good news worth waiting for. I don't know for sure, but I would say there's a good chance she's not alive anymore. The door wouldn't open though, but maybe that was a good thing, considering the noises coming from outside, from the street. Every day there was shooting outside. Sometimes we heard someone crying or screaming in the distance, and more vehicles marked with a white Z passed our house every day. But their passing wasn't as scary as when they stopped. It meant they wanted something, and they could come inside our house to get it. The sort of things that worried me before seemed stupid now. Great, arguing with Vika. Mum being mad at me. I was such a child. I wouldn't mind rolling back the time and being a child again. But Katya was still missing. I had to do something. Her house was on the neighbouring street, barely a 2-minute walk, but Vika hated the idea. Eric, don't even think about it. It's dangerous over there. I rolled my eyes. Vika, the city is occupied by the Russians. It's dangerous everywhere. And Katya was supposed to come back forever ago. What if she needs help? Her house is the first place to look. Then I'll go. Vika grabbed my backpack strap. You stay home. They said on the news that Russians are killing men, all the men they can find. You'll be taking a risk too. Don't you know what happens to girls during war? Vika shuddered. She didn't let go of the strap, though. Why does she always treat me like a child? Because you're both wanting to save each other, Yarrick. I'd like to say it's only Russian soldiers who do that, but it's not. I'm ashamed to say British and American soldiers have done that to women in war too. Every nation's soldiers have, and it's obscene. That's why I say I can respect the soldiers of any nation, because they're not the ones who get to choose who to fight, but not when they commit war crimes. Go together. Maybe you can protect each other. If we're both so worried for each other, let's go together. We'll feel safer, and if something happens, we'll be able to count on each other. After some hesitation, Vika agreed. Okay, let's do it like that. She smiled a little. When did you learn to compromise? This is an emergency. We can keep on arguing when the war ends. Our bravado has gone the moment we stepped outside. The city seemed deserted. No cars, no passers-by, only heaps of trash, debris, and houses with their doors bashed in. Felt like we were stuck in some post-apocalyptic movie. We counted 8 bodies by the time I reached Katya's house. All men, all with gunshot wounds. This wasn't supposed to happen to civilians. I could understand dying to a stray shell or during a bombing. These people didn't look like they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their hands were tied behind their backs. The side of Katya's house stopped us dead in our tracks. The door was broken down. We slowly peeked inside. The house was ravaged. Furniture turned over. The chandelier shattered. Even the fridge was on the floor. The floor was littered with broken glass and discarded food packs, empty bottles and dirty boot prints. And Katya was lying in the middle of it all. It took me a moment to process what I was seeing. Vika hugged me and looked away. Well, I just stood there, taking deep breaths and trying to calm us both down. Katya was without clothes, battered, covered in bruises, looking up at the ceiling with wide, unseeing eyes. There was a lot of dark blood, old and dried by now. A large pool of it was under Katya's head. Nearby, saw a pistol shell casing. I was right. We walked home in a haze. We came back completely lost, but at least we still had each other. It lessened the impact a little bit. Still, that evening we didn't talk again. Missed calls from Mum, 26. It's been several days since we found out about Katya. The situation in the city remained the same, though there were fewer shots to be heard. But we could still hear loud explosions in the distance. Our only reminder that somewhere out there, our army was still fighting the invasion. There was no electricity, no heating, and we had no way to reach Mum on the phone. And March was cold this year. We kept our winter jackets on. Neither of us could cook over the fire. And if we could, we'd still have no firewood. We ended up mostly eating packaged foods. Not getting any news was tough on us. We lived in a vacuum and knew nothing about the world beyond Bucha. Where was the front line now? Would the NATO states intervene? And when would we finally be free again? I couldn't stop thinking about Mum. Only now I could really understand how much she mattered and how much our brief calls used to help. I'd give anything I had to hear Mum's voice again. I wonder how things were for her. She must have been out of her mind with worry. Deep inside I felt guilt because I didn't call enough, didn't reassure her, didn't behave as well as I could. I didn't value her enough. One morning me and Vika were woken up by noise coming from the street. We could hear the engines roaring, orders being given, and muffled chatter of some soldiers. We didn't risk approaching windows, but I heard Russians mention rotation several times. On that very day's evening, our door was bashed open. 3 Russian soldiers entered the house. Me and Vika jumped to our feet, staring at them. The Russians scanned the building, then turned to us. They were all armed. One of them, with sergeant's insignia, was leering at Vika. "Hello, we're here to inspect this house." He looked around. "Does anybody else live here? Any adults?" I was so afraid. I felt so sick, so I just shook my head. Can you imagine finding a body that had had that done to them and then seeing enemy soldiers staring at your sister? Or worse, being that sister. The 3 Russians quickly searched the house. When they returned to the living room, the sergeant sat down on the sofa and looked around some more. Not searching anymore, but appraising. He clicked his tongue at our flat screen TV. Tusk, what a house. I think we'll stay here a while. Great. Our worst fear was coming true. Me and Vika exchanged frightened looks. Something wrong? Cat got your tongues? Cheer the hell up, we saved you from the Nazis, you... Glared at Vika again. Aren't you grateful? Oh god. Vika shouldn't backed away until she bumped into a wall. I don't think these 2 appreciate us here. The sergeant gestured for his men. Get the girl for questioning. Questioning my ass. There is no option here. That, many would say, is a sensible option. Although we know what happens when the mood drops to 0. You lose the will to live. We know that from the first one. But honestly, even without looking at that, I knew I had to do this. How can you not try and save your sister no matter what happens? It's like Bucha against ancient Rome. Sometimes you have to fight even if it's overwhelming odds that you can't beat. I couldn't let them hurt my sister. If they shot me, so be it, but I just couldn't. Leave her alone. I tried to tackle one of the soldiers, but he just punched me right in the face. My head hurt and stung, and then the room began to reel. I heard Vika scream, "Please, don't hurt him!" Another punch, I fell to the ground. I tried to get back immediately, but I got a kick to the gut. Then another one, again and again. Vika was desperate, screaming at them to leave me alone. "You behave yourself or I'll fucking strangle both of you." They stopped hitting me and I could finally breathe. I tried to get up, but my arms and legs were too weak, and the Russians dragged Vika into a room nearby. The door slammed shut, muffling her pleas. I saw nothing, but I heard the sounds. I knew what was happening behind that door. I thought I was going crazy. Vika's screams were burrowing into my brain. I refused to believe this was happening. Stuck in the far corner, I covered my ears and sat whimpering, trying to ignore the sounds coming from the room. And you're going to be questioning yourself afterwards. Did I make it worse? Did I provoke them and make it worse? But they were going to do it anyway. Eventually, Vika went quiet. I could only hear the crying. I couldn't even hear that. I don't know how long it lasted. By the time the door opened again, I wasn't thinking clearly. The Russians ignored me as they went about the house grabbing whatever they liked. "Sergeant, maybe let's take the girl to the headquarters, so we don't have to walk all the way here again." The sergeant shrugged. "Fine by me. We'll put her with the rest of the camp followers." Ugh, God. Yeah, there were prostitutes who followed war camps before. That's not what's happening here. Prostitutes, merchants, and others who follow war camps into battle in the hope of making profit off the soldiers, but that is not what this is. The Russians laughed. One of them went back to the bedroom and brought out Vika. She was unconscious. They left and took Vika away from me. I couldn't hold back tears any longer. Again, got beaten. This calls from Mum, 48. "Hey boy, what do you need? What are your parents?" Husky was confused but surprisingly friendly. "I came to ask for help with Vika because I knew Husky talked to Russians. As a Quisling, he might have had their trust. A long shot, the only one I had. I had gotten very little sleep in the previous days. An hour here, an hour there. Only because I was too exhausted. Exhausted by looking for things I could do, realizing how helpless I was. I want to see Mum. I wanted to hug her and never let go. Instead, I came to speak with Husky. That excuse of a human. Words didn't come easy, but I told him what the Russians did and where they took Vika. How I just had to climb the house to see the place. Damn it, he bit his lips and looked around. I don't know what he was afraid of. Wasn't he working with the Russians? You'll face death out there, come on. We'll talk inside. He got me a warm blanket and put up a kettle. The town still had no electricity, but they had a generator, and the Russians let him keep some gas for it. He asked me for my story again and wanted to know every detail, but not to help me as it turned out. This doesn't add up. The Russian army is only here for the nationalists. Besides, a Russian soldier wouldn't hurt a child. Oh, you fucking idiot. Are you sure they didn't take your sister in for a question? You fucking idiot. Gonna take a break there, and I'll join me next time. If you can, enjoy your coffee and have a peaceful day. Love each other. Bye now.